would love to just hear your thoughts about distortion and violin in general. Like, when did you first discover like, hey, I can distort this thing? What made you think about doing that? And then sort of what was the journey for you on, how am I going to do this and how did you arrive at where you are? Because I know you didn't arrive here on the first try, right?
Oh hell no! So I was like 18, and I had bought a Zeta, 4 string, Stratos. I don't even think they make them anymore. I'm not sure they make them anymore, but
Yeah,
I
they
bought one.
do. Yeah, they still make them.
I walked into Sam Ash and I asked the pimply faced kid who was probably my age. So I want my violin to sound like the guy from Smashing Pumpkins. I think that's literally what I had said. Because at the time, Siamese Dream had just come out, and you know Corgan Corgan's solo sound, his big muff. Like I think he's using a muff there. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't really know what was happening, but I knew that his tone was thick and rich, and it was amazing. Really, really, really great. And whatever happened in my head, that was the first thing I had in my head in terms of like when I had thought of like a shred sound, and I had just walked into Sam Ash and I said, I want my violin to sound like Billy Corgan's guitar. And the guy sold me. I wish I had kept this. See, this also shows how little the guy knew. The guy sold me a Metal Zone pedal. Uh, I don't have that pedal now. I did. So that was my first pedal. That was my first, and I like my rig was awful. It was that Metal Zone pedal attached, like, and it was, connected to like a crate combo. Real classy sound coming out of this thing. Yeah, something like this. And I just and it was really loud, and I just turned it up really loud. There's actually a thing that like we could get fooled about distortion, like the when it's really really loud, it could actually sound like garbage, and then you don't actually know that it sounds bad until you hear it in the studio, and then you get an unpleasant surprise there. You think you've got your kind of crappy sort of underground band, and you're like, oh yeah, we're gonna like totally record this album, it's gonna be awesome sounding, and then you like get in the studio and it sounds like wet trash, and then you don't understand why. You're just kind of like, but it sounds awesome in my garage. I don't understand what's happening. Why does it sound bad? I'll still stand by those guitar tones are fantastic. There's like, Corgan's tone on Siamese Dream. There's obviously Van Halen. Um, you know, Interestingly, Dimebag, who took his tone, who's actually I think subjectively doesn't have a good tone, but it was like his hands were just amazing, and then kind of like made it sound individual and awesome too. There's a lot of these guitar guys that I kind of took my inspiration from, also obviously. So
Yeah, that's my whole deal. All of my turn my mic down. All of my influences are guitar players. It's for
yeah,
the sound that I'm going for because I didn't hear any violinists sounding like I wanted to sound. I've heard guitar players though.
right. No, same. So all of my references are guitar references because I came up. I mean, like I can't like I said, my age is one where I came up in a lot of the sort of '80s, late '80s hardcore, New York hardcore sort of crossover, the sort of hardcore thrash crossover. Bands like Cro-Mags and Biohazard and Sick of It All, Youth of Today. Those guys they were not thinking about they're not like, oh well, let me craft my sound. That's definitely not it's just turn it on and be loud, and that's what it is. And and also the grunge stuff, of that certain era, that certain age. I was definitely inspired by like I said, even though Smashing Pumpkins isn't really grunge, you still like guys like Kim Thale, uh massive. you know, Jerry Cantrell. That sort of sound is amazing too. So and that all goes back to Sabbath, I think. So all of my references were guitar references because nobody was doing that stuff, and I was doing stuff on the violin, or I still am, I guess. I'm doing stuff on the violin that's like really guitar inspired. And then also in the back of my mind, not exactly wanting to be exactly like a guitar, because then I mean, look, I have a guitar here. I can just play guitar myself. You know, like I know how to do it too. I can just play guitar. But the violin is my chosen instrument. I do happen to maybe like it a little better. And then one thing that was like really interesting about the idea of heavy and distortion, that this guy Corey Unger, I worked with him for a few years. He was, because the band is defunct, even though uh, even though the guy from New England Hardcore Fest always calls him and asks for a reunion every year. He's the guitarist for a band called Blood Has Been Shed, which is an underground New England hardcore band, but they have some level of notoriety because it's two of the guys from Killswitch Engage that were in that band. It's Howard Jones and Justin. Uh, what are those balloons? Holy
I have no
smoke!
idea. I was hoping you knew. I was like, apparently somebody's having a birthday.
What are those balloons? I
There's
thought
nothing
I was
more
like,
metal than a balloon, man.
I was like, I have not done drugs since
Today,
like my 20s, really, and that I don't know, it's like some acid flashback or
I
something.
should have just acted like I didn't see him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's that's what you should have done. You should have been like, "What are you
Balloons?
talking about?"
What balloons, Earl?
I don't know. That's you. You listen. You all right? You all right? Anyway, yeah. So the reason why I brought up Corey Younger was because he produced two of the Resolution 15 albums, which was my old metal band. I don't know what people know or don't know or whatever. And he said one cool thing about the violin, that like, so when you try to make heavy on the violin, I think there's numerous disadvantages actually, which kind of got rectified. I think you and I have spoken about this before. There are numerous disadvantages, at least to be aware of, is the short. So you have, like, obviously you have a very thick bottom string. You have like have the B. It's mine goes. It's seven. It's E A D G C F B flat, right? And then you have this B flat and F string, and they're like really thick, and you have a short string length, right? Like if you look, compare it to a guitar string length, right? Right. So you have like your standard sort of like uh guitar string length, and then you have like your violin string length. It's like less than half, so it's like physics. It's you don't you don't mean to get, I didn't mean to do that. You don't get the same resonances. You don't get the same ability in that way. So when you want the sounds to vibrate as much as possible, you definitely don't have that advantage. But what Corey had said, which was really cool, was that what you do have, as the guitarists don't, is the ability for infinite sustain, because that bow just goes, like, as long as you want it to go. So, that ability of like like forever is a pretty cool advantage that I have definitely tried to take advantage of. We spent a long time like really reamping things and trying to like figure out sounds and this sort of a thing. And at least what ended up working for me, which he helped me sort of like figure out, is this high pre, where like you really jack the pre super high, but then your post gain is like barely distorted. It's not a high gain at all. Like there's not a lot of Like it's so that means you can still get the clarity, and there's a little bit of edge in it, but all of the power is coming from the pre, because what I'm trying to do on the violin, which uh Corey had done on the guitar, is that he made his pickups on the guitar super hot. They're like really sensitive and pushing out a lot of output way. Like you can't really have the equivalent of a DiMarzio pickup on a violin. I think also that's because of how our attacks are. Like what you had mentioned, the guitar, you can do the transient attack, but on the on the violin you have a bow, so it changes the equation 100%. You can't do it. So my workaround is to like jack the pre's, and then kind of like really have very low gain on the post.
Yeah, I know we've talked before. Like when you go back and listen to ACDC, really listen to it. They're not super gainy guitars. It's real heavy and it's real aggressive, but it's not like people first get the violin, they put the gain on 10, they put the volume on 10. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, there's the ACDC sound. You go, no, it's not.
No, you just get a whole bunch of noise, and it's actually what I alluded to earlier. That like when I was, you know, 18 in my garage with a metal zone pedal and a crate combo amp, turned every dial young, like just pushed all the way to 11. You know, you think you're getting. You think you're like really getting this heavy sound, and it's like you're just getting super angry beat farts.
And Dave Grohl, if anybody knows more about, getting a great tone than him, I don't know. But he talks about like less gain and more volume is where he's
Yeah,
doing his work.
yeah. I mean that. Listen, those Foo Fighter albums, the first ones, like I actually really straight up love those albums. Sound great, the color and the shape, and then the first one where the band is actually playing on it. That's a sick sounding album, so thick, and that I think it's the same thing. There's not a lot of gain going on those things, and then also if you listen to like all of Adam D's stuff, like from Killswitch, right? Also, that's their magic trick. It's not much gain. It's just jacked in terms of like the volumes.
I do want to talk a little bit about what your journey was from the metal zone and the crate. Like, how did you get to where you are now? What were some of the stops along the way? What were some things that maybe you missed that you had before that you don't have now?
Oh my god, maybe a big stop along the way was that crappy hippie jam band I was in for like 6 years. So I guess when I so that was that pause with the hippie band, and then when I graduated, I went back to college. I dropped out of school to do that thing, and then when I went back to college, I finished my degree, and that was also on hold. And then when I graduated, I realized I just wanted to be in a metalcore band the whole time. So I formed one, and like I know that, for instance, like I knew that one of my favorite bands, Lamb of God, they were using Mesas, like a Mark IV, I think. So so I like checked that stuff out, and I kind of like I went and bought a Mesa dual rectifier and a Mesa cab, and that I thought it was going to do it, but then I still was operating under the idea that like what works for guitars works for violins, and that's not true. But I had to learn. I think I still struggled with my sound. It wasn't really what I was looking for, but it was also, I think, the best that could be done at the time, because the technology wasn't suited to violins, and all of the amps and the guitar, the cabs are EQ'd and set to guitar frequencies, what works best for them. So that was always going to be a struggle. I think the next, so I just sort of soldiered on and did what I could and played what I played and did what I did, and then I think the next big change was the advent of simulators. Once Kemper started coming, Fractal Audio, Kemper, that sea change I think happened maybe God, maybe 12 years ago, right? It was something like this. 10 years ago, 10 to 12 years ago, I think that's when these sort of like profilers and high end, the Helix, the Line 6 stuff, the modelers started coming out. That was the big sea change, at least for violin and distortion, because I think what happened is that now you're going to zeros and ones. Now it's a computer sort of faking the funk in a way that would make up for like the short string length, all the physics things that I had talked about before. That was a problem.
Now, are you using an amp model for your distortion? You're using a distortion pedal, or are you using both? How do you get in that sound?
So I guess let's go to the second camera and I'll just show you things. Okay, so this is what I have here. This is my fractal audio. This is an Axe 8. It's old, right? But it still serves my purposes. So I'm not going to get an FM8 for now. There's no need. And that's hooked up to this. So I turned off the cab. If you can see here, the cab, the cab option is turned off. I only put the cab option on when I'm going through a PA system without my cabinet. So there it's plugged into the Mesa, and I use the Mesa's power amp. Like I don't use the pre, but I use the power amp, and it's going through a VHT cabinet. Now, the way I edit it is look at this setup. It's like super basic. There's like nothing going on here. I have gate, which I definitely need. So those are my set, numbers for the gate. Right at 70 minus 70 dB. And here we have my drive. I think it's on this one. I think I have a T808 Ibanez, sort of like fake Ibanez. And see, look at that drive. It's not even there. And then you have the amplifier, which it's an FAS modern. I'm not necessarily sure what they're trying to simulate there, but it sounds great. So I'm just gonna, you know, yeah. So that's basically my setup. I'm using my pinky a lot, really a lot, and then also muting on the fly as soon as I finish playing that note. Um, uh, yeah, a finger goes down like right away as soon as I play. And then when I'm like doing leads, first of all, I generally tend to not whatever my patch is for like chugging for rhythms, I don't use the same one for leads. My lead channel is it's an EVH, it's an Eddie Van Halen 5150 cab amp simulator, and it's way more, and I've got like a delay on it.
But you don't have like white snake levels of delay on there. It's pretty chill.
No, it's well, there's the Eddie Van Halen level of delay, and then like the more glamour. I think the more lipstick you wear, like the more. Oh my god! Well, I feel like this chat is going to get us in trouble for many reasons.
It's all good. This is what the edit button's for.
We've talked about things that are not distortion.
It's okay. We can edit it to be about distortion. And then I'll, all the cutting room floor stuff I'll set aside in case we ever run for office. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share on distortion?
Uh, I I think my final thought, honestly, is have the sound you want in your mind, like while you're like crafting your sound. And I think it ultimately comes from you. I think there's a lot of it's a balance. Of course, the gear matters, right? And of course, having knowledge of what how sound behaves, which is basically what we're talking about here. I think all of that is you can't do it without that. You it is you that makes that sound happen. I mean, I would say I would go back to like you know a crappy Metal Zone crate rig and say there were probably moments there where it was kind of cool anyway, because when we were in high school, like sort of like thrashing out these tunes, there was a real aggression there. There was a real like kind of honesty in the music that we were making. And even though like on one level it was probably really crappy, on another level it probably wasn't also, because we were really actually a bunch of angry kids like making angry music, through a terrible rig that maybe still came across. There's actually plenty of instances of that where like you listen to the stuff and you're like, this is objectively terrible sounding, but I love this album. It's a middle ground that like I think that like we as musicians try to find, that you do need to be concerned about your gear, but that's not the all. I think sometimes people tend to overthink their gear, and then on the reverse, sometimes people don't think enough about their gear. you
Yeah, when
know
I'm doing a tone audit with somebody, somebody will bring their gear into me and be like, "Hey, I don't like my tone. Can you help me dial this thing in?" And the first thing I always do is let's shut off all this stuff. Shut off all the pedals, turn all the gains down. Let's get a nice clean sound. Now, I want you to get as close to the sound that you're looking for. Get as close as you can here. And
that's a
then
great
we'll start messing with pedals.
I
Because,
love that.
they're like, "Oh, well, I'm going to play just like I play Bach. And then I'm going to turn on this distortion and then I'll be rocking out." And you go,
Right.
that's not it at all. Rock isn't a genre, it's an attitude. And if you don't bring the attitude in, no number of pedals is going to make it sound like rock.
Right. Oh my God, that's thank you for you need to say that over and over and over again. Watch this. This is the last thing I'm gonna do. Right, check this out. So we talked a lot about how the sound, the gear, the what I dialed in, blah 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 blah. But if I don't play it the right way, what if I played like I worked so hard to get the sort of kind of tone, but if I go uh it sounds awful. I would never have the face to go on stage and play Bach with that rig. Right, but did you see how it like didn't work? Like trying to go, first of all, this bow is the wrong bow. All of it is wrong. Like all of the things that you learned that make sense, right? I don't have a violin here, but like so all the things that make sense for like right? All the things you like know to do they don't work. So you need to know what language you're speaking when and where. I think that's my final thought.
Well, this is a perfect opportunity, I think, to tell people like you've got Resolution 15, which is a metal band playing kind of traditionally metal sounds. And then you've got Seven Sons, which is, if you look at your picture, you guys look like a Baroque string quartet.
Yes.
And where can people hear both sides of Earl? Where can we hear the plugged and the unplugged side of Earl? Where can people find you?
Just Seven Sons just released an album, a complete reimagining of the Dillinger Escape Plan's "One of Us Is the Killer," and that's out now on Silent Pendulum Records. And we have a couple shows lined up in the next few months, but we're kind of like taking it easy because we've got a really big thing coming up in June that we don't want to announce quite yet.